Good morning, everybody. Today is March 24th, 2023. This is the fourth Friday meeting of the Phenotype Development and Evaluation Workgroup. As you know, we did not meet in the earlier this month, second Friday, March 14th, I believe. So I want to, we usually start by just looking at our OKR. So as you all know, this is the OKRs that we agreed upon. That we have three main objectives. Objective number one is to harden the phenotype development and evaluation framework. Objective number two is to improve collaboration by enabling a community-wide participation in the phenotype development and evaluation. And objective number three is to promote the usage of the OHDSI Phenotype Library. So we are at the end of quarter one almost, and this is the end of March. So let's look at very quickly where we are. This is just my opinion. Really would like your input on it. So I have put some check marks, green check mark to think that we are doing well. X is when I feel like we're not doing well, and everything else I feel it's okay. So the main key results are enable. The first one was enable the community to complete 10 phenotypes by quarter one 2023, and I think that we made tremendous progress over that in that aspect with Phenotype February 2023. So I think that's good. So I put a check mark there, and please speak up if you disagree with any of these ideas. I just want to go through this very quickly. The scientific debate part, I think we still we did some progress in Phenotype February, but I think there is still some pending issues there. We still have more time, still end of quarter two, so I think that's okay. The terminology and scientific definitions, I think we are still struggling. We need to start making progress here. This is the issues where what is phenotype or cohort? What's the difference between a phenotype and a cohort? What is the, and so on. There's a lot of ambiguity in the use of our terms, I believe. So I put an X there, saying that that's like a issue that we have not even started working on, but that needs some work. Integrate probabilistic phenotyping. We have started conversations on that, and we have till quarter three. So I think that's okay. In the scientific papers, I think we are beginning to make progress on that, so I feel okay about it. Regarding objective two, the first key result is already discussed. It was addressed by Phenotype February. The second key results that we wanted was clinically trained scientists and having 5 new clinical collaborators. I think via Phenotype February we have achieved that, so I want to mark that as a complete. And in terms of objective 3, which is to promote the usage of the OHDSI Phenotype Library, we've made good progress on that. I would say we have shown how OHDSI Phenotype Library can fit in Phenotype February, and we have several phenotypes that are now being accepted. So I think we made progress there. The submission process still needs some clarifications. I think having more communication sessions is important. So I would like your feedback at one point in time on this. But I think we're still doing well over that for that OKR. The last one is the scientific paper on the OHDSI Phenotype Library itself. Is something that we wrote up that's got time, but we've not started working on it. So so that's my personal assessment of our work group's OKR. Any feedback, thoughts on this? I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I got them. I just wanted to ask a question on objective 3 because it's something that we're working on the HL7 side of things. The representation of this knowledge in some kind of standard way in the phenotype library, have we had any conversations about sort of minimum characteristics or some kind of other descriptives that would represent all of this wonderful information, in such a way that it would make these highly reusable and at least accessible? So yeah, I got a question because I don't know if I missed that conversation or we just haven't brought it up, but it's something that we're working on another space. So
yeah, I would love to talk to you about it. I think so. What are the components of the phenotype library, such as things like metadata? It's its usability or expected uses. Where has it been tested? What's the clinical idea that is trying to model? What's the measurement error of those models? We do not have a standardized, I would say, we do not have a agreed upon way to represent that metadata right now. So
what about the evaluation component, though? I mean, like, I think that's another critical piece that I don't think people are paying enough attention to, and I think that's one of the things I love about this project. So
yeah,
can we add that as one of the categories of metadata that probably would be really wonderful to somehow represent?
absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely. So we, as of right now, the evaluation framework is still, I would say, still evolving. We are converging to some framework. Obviously, with Fee Evaluator, we have a quantitative way of measuring and performing evaluation, but we're also using the core diagnostic as a more qualitative framework. With qualitative approaches, it's almost a blurb of text. Some of these texts are very, very long, and it's capturing those and communicating those has been a challenge. Right now, the approach we have taken is use the Odyssey forums to communicate your thoughts, and then the Phenotype Library would just reference the Odyssey forum post. Is that a long-term solution? I don't know, but as of right now, that's our approach. And it could also
it smacks of scanning clinical notes in their medical record of trying to find the information you're looking for, which is,
yeah. So if you want to talk further about it, we could brainstorm on it, Ben, and would love to learn what you're doing with NCQA.
Well, it's not what we're doing at NCQA. It's there's a connectathon in May at HL7 meeting that they're trying to do a cohort definition track, and they're going off in directions that are kind of wacky, and I'm just like, well, there's all this great work happening in the Odyssey community. Why are we, I just was, yeah, I will. I'll set some time to talk with you about that later, because I think they're this should be represented there, and I think we're both struggling with the same thing about how do you represent that information, both on the the metadata, but also, like I said, the evaluation results in a highly shareable, sort of interoperable way.
Yeah, so I'll make a note of that. Let's follow up. If anybody else is interested in this topic, please let us know. I can create a subgroup kind of conversation to move this further. Okay.
Add me to that, Galvin. My curiosity is a little bit piqued there.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go to the agenda now. So in our last workgroup meeting, which ended February, Juan ended the conversation by talking about some ideas on probabilistic phenotyping. It piqued interest of everybody, and then there was a request to further this conversation. Specifically, he proposed three high-level ideas. One is to use a probabilistic framework like as implemented by the tool Aphrodite by itself, or to improve an atlas-based cohort, rule-based cohort definition by using Aphrodite, or using a hybrid of both. And he talked about pros and cons of both. And then we wanted to learn more, and so we're going to kick off this conversation today just to hear from Juan a proposal to move these ideas further. Juan, are you on the call?
Yes. Let me just share. Where's the screen share in this? Oh, there we go. Yeah, you can see my screen now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah. So this is what Gotham was talking about. That, I mean, we have the probabilistic way of doing stuff that's not very, hasn't picked up a lot of steam. We tried it during Phenotype February without a lot of luck as well. So this is what I proposed last time to, kind of think about it, in the sense that we could use it as is, meaning that, we don't have any rigid definition. We just use a set of keywords. We use Aphrodite and then we use the methodology behind it to identify patients. I know that a lot of people are kind of grinning of, oh, this is too relaxed, this is not rigorous, and I understand that. So that's one of the cons about that. One thing we tried last Phenotype February was, okay, so let's see, we have a probabilistic definition. We had a rule-based definition. Let's see if we can use both of them to kind of merge, the approach together to aid, mostly because obviously the more traditional Odyssey way is doing the rule-based. So was you leveraging the probabilistic definition to find features, to find things that should be helpful to put back into the rule-based definition. So that's this use case too, where we wanted to use Aphrodite to help the definitions. So there's a lengthy post on the forum last year with Tiffany Callahan and a few others about how we did that. We've still been working on the paper. This is ridiculous that it's still not fully ready. But the idea was, okay, fine, we found some features. We had some clinician look at them and say, hey, yeah, maybe that's not a bad idea to add them in there. So here, the pros of this approach was to take that rigid definition and try to rerun, after adding new features to it. Obviously, with that, yes, I mean, you will get a better phenotype definition. However, you're probably going to find less patients. So I don't know if that, that would take us to where we really wanted to go. The other approach that I thought about last time, I mean, when we discussed this, yeah.
Sorry, Juan, before you gloss over that, it's like, why would we find fewer patients?
Because if we're adding new, concepts or new rules to the rule-based definition, you're gonna subset other people. You're most likely to find less. You're not gonna find more. That's one thing.
Yeah, I guess if the rules are ors versus rules are ands versus ors, and you think most of them are going to come in as ands?
I mean, at least in the one we evaluated, they came in as ands. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but if they're ors, yeah, you're right. We might find new people. And the other way to do this was, okay, fine, let's just use Atlas definitions, build a model on them, and and use it, right? And we can even use it on the set of people that the Atlas definitions didn't find, and we will find new patients belonging to that cohort. So the probabilistic model will have the same limitations as the Atlas definition, but when you rerun it, you won't have the rigidity of a yes or no. You'll have a probability, right? And then you can decide, oh, okay, well, I mean, I want to relax the probability to make people belong in this phenotype by to 75% or less. So you kind of remove the rigidity by building a model based on the definition, which is what a lot of people do. And you see all these one-off papers where they created this gold standard. How did they make the gold standard? Well, they came up with a phenotype definition by rules, then they trained the model, they rerun it again, they find new people. So that's kind of the approach. So this doesn't break a lot of the preconceptions of what people want for phenotyping, and it'll still need a rigid kind of approach to begin with, which doesn't help us with the problem of scalability, but will help us with the problem of rigidity. I like to think about it that way. Yeah, so that's where we were at. But however, Gotham made a good point that we didn't really get a lot of traction. There's not a lot of discussion going around this. Gotham was mentioning, maybe we should spin up the probabilistic phenotyping group again. We did it a couple of years back. We had like 5-6 people showing up until we all decided, well, this wasn't it. So I think that I want to more ask a general question. What do you think are the barriers, or what is stopping you from, wanting to try probabilistic phenotyping? Because, I mean, as we all know, the process of, traditional phenotyping is rigid, it's time consuming. It requires a lot, right? And with probabilistic, you can get away with a little bit, more relaxed approach. So I don't know, there might be another barrier to this. And this is why, I post this 3 different questions here on at least these are the things that I see as potential barriers. I don't know if anybody else in the call has a different one, and that will be very useful to know, because I don't want to spin up another probabilistic phenotyping work group again, or sub work group, without people, without knowing why people really are not we're not getting the traction needed. Or maybe it's because people just don't like me. That might be another one. But
We like you.
So yeah, so what are your thoughts on this? So I put it down here, people just don't know how to use Aphrodite. Totally valid. There's not a lot of documentation. It hasn't been kept up as much as other packages in the community. I totally agree on that. I totally recognize that. The other thing could be is that, okay, there's just not enough machine learning know-how, but I don't think that that's the case these days. Or, are people just too interested in, not interested in some shaky definitions? I know that this work group hammers the point of review, high quality, and all that stuff, which is 100%, what you want in a phenotype. But, this is an alternative that could potentially get us there for cheaper. I'm not saying for free. I'm not saying, without a lot of that work, but I'm saying without as much work, maybe. So what do you guys think? What is stopping people from embracing probabilistic phenotyping?
Well, one thing, from using Phevaluator, I mean, I get a probabilistic model also from it, and we're sort of working on parallel tracks here. One of the things I guess I would be concerned about is if we wanted to do let's say a clinical paper using a phenotype algorithm definition based upon probabilistic, how well will that be accepted? How well will people be able to understand what's in there? Because I'm guessing, I haven't seen the output of Aphrodite, at least recently, but but you get a set of factors, conditions, observations, drugs, and associated beta coefficients for them. Is that?
Well, it depends on what model you use, but yes, you do get, if you use a regression, yeah, you do get the coefficients. If you use like a random forest, you just get a set of rules, right? Like the ranges and those kinds of things.
Yeah, so that would be one of my concerns, would be how well it would be accepted and understood if we wanted to use it in a clinical paper versus using ICD-9, ICD-10 codes and deterministic phenotyping rules has been, well established and is easy for clinicians to understand.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point, right? But I mean, we have seen that shift though, right? Because I mean, a lot of the literature now takes a machine learning model, a deep learning model that's a complete black box that's been validated, and they just, take it, right? So I think that there is a little bit more of a opening now for people to take these definitions than before.
It
Anybody?
kind of biases something that's still contentious in the community related to that, because this implies, and well, I mean, I'll throw that out as a question. I presume it implies that we'd be using different definitions at different sites, right? We'd be training a model at each site. And that in itself is kind of a contentious issue in network research, right? There was one debate that, well, I think last year, that kind of dug into that more deeply, as to whether or not that should be something that we'd support, having even different rule-based definitions at each site. Here you'd be having different statistical models at each site. I do think there's some unresolved things. If you, and I say this as a fan of probabilistic phenotyping, and I do think I'll say it up front, I do think we need to find like another productive place for it to be more upstream in the phenotype development process. But in terms of actually using them in a study, I do think there's some unresolved questions around what does that introduce in terms of bias into a study? Like, if you have a long tail of beta coefficients, do those have some kind of confounding in terms of the effect you're trying to estimate? Whereas at least with like a simple rule-based phenotype, we can kind of get our heads around, we think that we've kind of created, you know what I mean? We've created a bit of a more simplistic definition, and we don't worry as much about some kind of connection between our definition and our outcome in ways we don't anticipate. I don't know if that is coming across clearly, but I think it's just an unresolved question in terms of how it would impact our analysis.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, you're hitting the nail on the head with that. And we did had a paper a few years back on on the comparing, just sharing the definition that was of the model train in one site and sharing it across sites, or sharing the recipe for the model and then retraining it at each site. And yes, as expected, retraining at each site had a little bit better performance than just sharing the model. So definitely there will be some of that, right? You will get this variance between sites because of just clinical practice, right? But you do get that variance in a rule-based definition anyways. You just don't notice it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is, you can make an argument either way.
Yeah, no, but that's definitely a good point. And I mean, maybe we should try to work through, showing that, right? Showing, how much does it affect? Does it make a big impact or not? Sharing the model versus retraining at each site, in a more formal way, so we can actually get around, well, not around, but we can actually have something to point out and say, hey, we can do this. We are going to lose, some, I don't know, recall, whatever, but we will be fine across sites. So that might be a good idea, right? To try to think of basically like a network study where we replace the phenotyping component with probabilistic ones, one sharing a model across sites and the other way sharing the recipe, and see, how much does that affect any outcome, anything that we're looking at. That's a good point. And definitely that's good to know that, we should push somewhere around that direction to know that. Anybody else had any other thoughts?
Well, when you build the Aphrodite model, you can set the prediction time window where it actually looks what period of time it actually looks to be.
Joel, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there. So basically, in the interest of time, apologies for interrupting. So basically, what I'm hearing is we are going deeper into what Aphrodite is and what it can do and whether it is valid. So these are earlier, like, I want to learn about Aphrodite before committing into probabilistic phenotype kind of conversations. If that is the case, like going back to what Juan proposed, maybe the reasons why people are not engaging is they just don't get it. So is that the issue here, that do we need another conversation, another educational session from Juan to understand it a little bit before committing to much more work?
I think that's fair. I think it's been a while, and at least I could stand an update.
I'll just throw out there as a potential barrier. You never know how things go when you do try to run packages sometimes. And so anyway, I think that the potential of it becoming tough to kind of get through execution is probably one of the it's been one of the barriers for me, having not looked at it in a little while anyway. And then it's finding its kind of productive space. I think there's enough interest here for the work group. I'll just throw that out there. I think there's just lots here that we can dig into in terms of finding its productive space, but I totally get where you're coming from, Juan, in terms of wanting to see a critical mass.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. Yeah, so that's good for time. I mean, we could definitely do another session and then see, if anybody is interested in following further.
Should I set up do you want to do it as part of the work group meeting, or would you like a separate?
We should do it as part of the work group meeting, I think. Unless
how much time would you need?
I can go over it in 30 minutes or less. Okay,
so I will put this on the agenda for we are the next meeting. There's a request from the syphilis. I keep saying save the syphilis challenge.
Sisyphus.
All right, but the end of April, how about that? The 4th Friday meeting. end of April, I have you on the agenda to give us to help us learn about Aphrodite and answer questions like the questions that Joel has posed.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you.
All right. And then we'll discuss the subgroup and other ideas. All right. So moving on to the next and the main agenda of today, which is the continuation of the Phenotype February. Maxime Moynat and his collaborators, who will be introduced in this meeting, will be presenting to us their work on optic glioma, part of the neurofibromatosis phenotype. As you all know, this was our bonus phenotype for Phenotype February, P11. So Maxime, the floor is yours.
Thanks. We'll present together with Britt Danes, who's a clinical researcher at the Erasmus Medical Center, the pediatric department. And this is actually a project we already started defining these phenotypes before Phenotype February. And it was very timely that this came around. We were doing this as part of the EU Pearl project, which is focused around clinical trials, specifically platform trials. And the challenge we have is finding patients feasible, eligible for this clinical trial across multiple centers. So for that, we need good phenotypes that can run across centers. So that's a bit the challenge. And then I'll give the word to Britt to introduce the clinical description of neurofibromatosis and optical pathway glioma. And then after that, we'll present on the evaluation we did of the phenotypes.
Well, thank you, Maxime. I'll try to keep it short because I can talk for neurofibromatosis for a long time. But the key points for you, important to understand, is it's a disease that's hereditary, and it predisposes to a variety of manifestations, including some benign and malignant tumors. And what makes it so difficult about this disease is that the clinical expression is very variable. So that means that some patients have no symptoms at all, and others are severely affected, which have multiple tumors throughout their body. So in terms of presentation, as the clinical description is that can vary very much. Some patients do never visit the hospital, and some visit the neurologist or the pediatrician or the ophthalmologist. So this is the main challenge that we face in neurofibromatosis. So we are, in terms of the queries for the Odyssey, we're depending quite heavily on the diagnosis codes. And one of the manifestations of neurofibromatosis type 1 that we are particularly interested in are the optic pathway gliomas. And these are benign tumors in the brain that are in the optic nerve, so they can present with like visual acuity loss or visual field defects. And they almost exclusively develop in the young children with NF. So an optic pathway glioma developing past 18 years of age will be very rare. And these are mostly diagnosed using the MRI scan and the ophthalmological examination. And what is the advantage of this manifestation, and generally across centers and countries? This one does have kind of a scheduled follow-up. So the children with the OPG will visit ophthalmologists very often and will receive regular MRI scans. So this could be a hint to identifying patients. And as Maxime already mentioned, the problem that we're facing is because neurofibromatosis is a rare condition, appearing in approximately 1 in 3,000 individuals. This means that if we want to do an effective clinical trial, or a platform trial in our case, that we would have to include many centers to reach an acceptable sample size. And in an ideal world, we would like to use these queries or OMAP to say to a center, well, these are the patients we're looking for. How many patients would you have approximately available at your center? So that's why we were doing this exercise in EU Pearl. And as Maxime said, when this Phenotype February came along, that's why we're very enthusiastic to work with you, because we created something for our center that works with the Erasmus Medical Center in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. But we had no idea how it would work outside of our center because it was very specific to our data. And we did also, Maxime, a little bit of a literature review to see if already some work was done before us. But of course, with a rare disease, we're always facing the challenge that not much is published about it. So we did find one validation study in Canada, and they used billing code algorithms. And what especially for us was not so good to see actually, is that there was a very lack of the NF specific codes, but most patients could be identified through the free text data. But as we all know, free text is difficult to extract and to analyze, so we still have to rely on diagnosis codes. And that's why for the NF, and I will give it over to Maxime in a minute, is that we created some cohort definitions, both for NF1 as a whole, because that would be ideal, and also for specifically the optical pathway gliomas that are associated with NF1. Which I think, Maxime, is also good to mention that the optic pathway gliomas can also occur in non-NF1 patients, but they are the most common tumors in NF. Can I give back the word to you, Maxime, or did I miss something important?
Yeah. Thanks for setting that that scene. So yeah, we defined 5 cohorts, basically going from very broad to more specific in general. So to start off, we defined a cohort for neurofibromatosis type 1 in general. Just using diagnosis code. This is quite a straightforward cohort definition, actually, just looking for this diagnosis code with descendants. Then, to be more sensitive, because we already know that not always the diagnosis code is captured at this granular level, we also made a more sensitive definition, taking the parent concept of just neurofibromatosis or neurofibromatosis syndrome, and then excluding elements that are specific for NF type 2, like hearing problems. Then we made 3 cohorts for an optical pathway glioma, 2 based on diagnosis codes, 1 with a very specific one with the optic nerve glioma, which would be the preferred code for an OPG, or we would expect. But we also created a definition based on a more generic diagnosis code, namely a neoplasm of the optic nerve, in combination both with also a neurofibromatosis syndrome in the patient history. Then lastly, we also defined a cohort based on follow-up treatment. So patients diagnosed with neurofibromatosis and then having at least 1 MRI of the brain and 3 ophthalmology visits within 1 year. Because that's, as Britt explained, the treatment plan basically, or the follow-up care for a patient diagnosed with an OPG. So we did the internal evaluation on the Erasmus MC data for these cohorts. And in general, what we found was what we expected. I'll just give some highlights here. Any questions in the meantime? Before we get to the more exciting part. So in total, we found about 1,000 NF1 patients and about 50 OPG patients. We also looked at the overlap between cohorts. And one thing that was interesting, that there were 2 persons that who had hearing loss, but also have an OPG, which is kind of conflicting, you would say, although it could of course co-occur, but this is something that was interesting from that. Then if we looked at the follow-up care,
this cohort, sorry, this cohort OPG, this definition, does that have any exclusions?
No.
No, okay.
No.
So you said OPG can occur outside NF1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's probably what we see here. We also look at the overlap between OPG based on follow-up care and based on diagnosis codes. And the interesting thing is that the overlap is just 27%, or 29 patients. And it was quite a large number that was only identified by follow-up care, but not by the diagnostic code. In our Erasmus MC data, we actually also did a chart review of these patients, or Britt did actually, to actually validate whether these patients had an OPG. in summary, there are quite a lot of false positives in there. Patients who did receive follow-up treatment, but actually did not have an OPG. But there were also patients identified who did not have the diagnosis code, but were identified through this phenotype based on follow-up treatment.
And how was the determination made that the persons with the label OPG, the diagnosis OPG, did not have OPG, like the false positives? How was the determination made?
We did not actually have patients who had the diagnosis code OPG who did not, but what Maxime meant is that through the follow-up query, we did identify some patients who fitted in this phenotype, but who did not have an OPG. So I just looked into the EHR status for that patient, and then manually checked in the free text if they had an OPG, yes or no.
So they had an NF code, but not an OPG code. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Okay, so they were getting in one of your earlier definitions, what, 1 through 3 or something like that, 1 through 2. No,
Yeah,
I guess 5 also didn't require a.
Yeah, it did require a diagnosis of neurofibromatosis, but the generic neurofibromatosis syndrome, and then receiving that specific follow-up care.
Right.
I guess my question, sorry, let me rephrase my question. Are there persons in the OPG cohort who, upon chart review, were determined to not have OPG?
No.
No. Okay.
So if they have the code, it's very specific, very good.
But optic nerve, neoplasm of the optic nerve isn't specific enough. It's not a glioma necessarily. Is that true?
I think we did have a few false positives in that group, Britt. So the optic nerve glioma, that was very specific, as in all patients identified.
Optic nerve glioma.
Yeah.
But neoplasm of the optic nerve, which is much more common. I'm just looking at the counts here, at least in our system. Optic nerve glioma is very small. Optic neoplasm of the optic nerve is much larger.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Maxime said, I believe we have some false positives there, but I do not remember the exact causes of those false positives.
Yeah, so what the specific diagnosis actually was there. Yeah. Yeah, now I have to go back to the numbers as well. How many exactly there, what the false positive rate was. But we excluded that from this review as we based this all on Cohort diagnostics.
Did you guys use? I'm just looking through the definitions here. Did you guys use or evaluate a term that was less specific, like one of the parent terms that Joel was talking about? Because I that's not jumping out at me, but I might be missing it. Like, did one of the definitions that you looked at look at a more general term for optic neoplasms?
Yeah, so what the term we used there was neoplasm of optic nerve.
Okay, sorry, I missed that.
Combination with a neurofibromatosis diagnosis.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry, I missed this. On the overlap plot, where you're showing the logic, the core definition number listed as number 3, optic pathway glioma specific, or optic pathway glioma sensitive, or optic pathway glioma follow-up.
So on this plot, the bottommost overlap, that's the follow-up versus the sensitive OPG. So number 4 and 5.
Yeah. Thank you.
This is actually outdated comment. I should remove that because first we made definition 4 excluding malignant neoplasms, and then actually the specific and sensitive were the same. So we re-included the malignant ones. So yeah, I should remove this comment. That's actually after this evaluation, the change we made in the cohorts. Such that it became more sensitive. In general, the incidence of NF1 was as expected in a tertiary hospital population. So it was about 1 in 1,000. As Britt said, in the general population, it's about 1 in 3,000. But of course, in a specialist hospital setting, you would expect a higher incidence. Especially because the Erasmus Medical Center is a pediatric specialism center. Then we also look at the age distribution. We expect, as this is a hereditary disease, that it occurs in a young population, and that's indeed what we see. The occurrence of NF1 is decreasing as age goes up. We see most occurrences in the youngest population. And an OPG is diagnosed almost exclusively in children younger than 18 years, and that was also as expected. Then there was a very interesting trend. So if you look at the incidence over time, there is in 2017 a noticeable peak for basically all the cohorts, which can be explained by two things. Because then at the time a new EHR system was introduced at Erasmus. And the neurofibromatosis research started. So that also caused clinicians to actually label the patients more thoroughly with the right NF manifestation. And this very low incidence is because it's actually below the small cell count of 5. So there is some incidence here, but it's just very, very small. And that's also expected because it's a very rare disease.
I'm sorry, the two plots there, the top one is, the top one is what?
NF1, and the bottom one is OPG sensitive.
OPG sensitive.
Yeah, and that's the same for this one. Yeah.
And they're the same scale in the y-axis, right?
No, they're not actually. No. This is from the 0 to 1. And, yeah.
10 times.
Yeah.
Difference. 10.
I think the incidence of OPG within the NF1 population is about 5%. 5% of the NF1 patients has an OPG, and that's also the difference you see here. Not really, but so it's much more rare OPG. Then a few more highlights. In the visit context, we see mostly diagnoses in the outpatient context, which is also as expected. You won't expect people with NF to come through the ER. And then what we did not expect is that there were no chemotherapy treatments in our data for these patients, which specifically carboplatin and vincristine we would expect. This could be a data issue on our side. So that's to be investigated. And then
no chemotherapy at all? No,
so indeed, no. So apparently that's omission in our system, in our database. So yeah.
So no chemotherapy, in the visual that you're showing, it says condition.
Yeah, sorry. So that actually refers to that a quarter of the OPG patients got diagnosed with a malignant neoplasm of optic nerve. I didn't include a screenshot for the no care. So there's nothing to see there, as in
Got it.
there are no chemotherapies. Yeah, we did see anesthetics, which was expected because you would expect them before procedures, either an MRI or a surgical procedure, which we do expect in this population. So that's for our internal evaluation. In the last time, I want to quickly also highlight a few points from the external validation on the results on the Odyssey network, which we found a bit tricky because we were not familiar with these databases.
Maxim, one question. Have you spoken to any of the clinicians or experts who actually manage patients with optical pathway glioma at that medical center and get an approximate count of how many have received chemotherapy for optic pathway glioma?
Good question. Britt? We did not discuss this specifically.
Yeah, would say in 10 years, approximately, we see almost 20 patients with OPG. And then of these 20 patients, only half of them become symptomatic, and only 1/3 of that half require chemotherapy.
Okay.
So that would imply approximately 3 to 5 patients who would receive this therapy.
Okay. So you've identified 50 people in the cohort definition. So that's in line with 20, right? And not observing chemotherapy is not a flag in terms of, it's not a flag of sensitivity errors because we only have potentially 3 cases. Okay.
Yeah, and for us it was a flag in data quality actually more because we were just a bit puzzled that there were no chemotherapies at all in the characterization. Any other questions on this internal validation? Then I want to highlight a few things in the validation or the results from the network. Let me go to the cohort counts. So we just focus here on cohort counts because we don't know what we could expect from available data in these databases. Very notable, NF type 1 was not present in the IMS datasets. I assume this is because these are ICD-10 based, and ICD-10 does not have the specific codes for the manifestations of NF. I'm not sure whether that's a valid assumption.
You can check for that in the concept sets tab of this tool by looking at how does your concept set resolve.
For that particular.
And if you select on the mapped, and you can filter on the vocabulary ID, ICD-10. So it looks like there is only ICD-10 CM, and there is no ICD-10. And I'm going to assume that ICD-10 CM is a US specific modification, and it does not appear, at least in the tool, that ICD-10 has that code. And I don't know why that is. It's just an observation. That's a question that we have to ask. How are persons with this disease represented in ICD-10 vocabulary?
Yeah. So this is something we have observed in our Erasmus data as well. When just looking at ICD-10 codes, we only had the Q85, which is just neurofibromatosis in general. We can see that in this data set, the neurofibromatosis syndrome, that is part of the ICD-10 code, so the Q850. We actually did a remapping, a more specific mapping of the original diagnosis codes at Erasmus. So we also could capture these NF manifestations, and that improved our sensitivity a whole lot.
And looking through it, there does seem to be an ICD-10 code there, neurofibromatosis, parentheses, non-malignant.
Yeah, so that's for the more generic neurofibromatosis, so not specifying the subtype.
Of glioma. Oh, okay.
Of 1 and 2.
Oh, of 1 and 2. Oh, okay.
Because if we look at the cohort counts of
right.
neurofibromatosis, but excluding codes for type 2 specific events, then actually we do get some counts from the IMS datasets. So they do have the general neurofibromatosis diagnosis codes, but not a specific type 1. Then we also looked at, of course, for the OPG definitions. The very specific one, optical pathway glioma, just gave counts in the IQVIA ambulatory EMR and the Optic EHR. So our preliminary conclusion, what we also will take into our paper that we're actually writing on this research, is that this is not really well applicable across a network because this code just does not occur in many databases. But if we take this more generic code, which will introduce a few false positives, that seems to be more applicable across a network. And also, we looked at the incidence here compared to the NF1 counts, and that seems consistent that about 5% of the NF1 patients have a OPG. So yeah, we kind of have a trust that this actually works. So that would be one of our conclusions in the paper we're writing, that yeah, we need these more generic, less granular diagnosis codes.
Okay.
Then yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say about these findings on the external validation. Are there actually some descriptions of these databases available within the Phenotype Phebruary? Phenotype
Yes,
group?
we can share that, and it is on a website, on a GitHub page. I will.
Awesome. I could find some from previous studies, but I'm not sure whether these are still relevant.
Yeah, I think it's over here, at the site that I just sent you.
Thanks.
Okay, so in terms of OHDSI Phenotype Library, are you ready to submit this for OHDSI Phenotype Library?
Yes, so we can submit our results.
Okay.
MC data. Yep.
So is your phenotype development evaluation process complete?
What are the requirements?
Complete, it can continue to iterate, but can you, is it complete as of right now? Like, do you feel confident as of right now? Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the to be accepted into the phenotype library, we just have to go through a checklist and then do what is called as a peer review. We do not have a formal way we don't have a formally agreed process for peer review as of right now. We have explored several options to do a peer review. One of the ideas was to use a checklist-like approach. And the other one is to, that's one extreme. Like if you meet the checklist, you're in, right? And that's just very objective, saying, do you have a clinical description? Have you developed one or more cohort definitions? Have you applied the cohort definition on at least one data source? Have you executed OHDSI tools such as cohort diagnostics and Phe evaluator on that one data source and looked at it? Have you provided some insights, which could be a subjective insights, and summarize this into a forum post? If you meet this checklist, you can be accepted. That's one way of that, one school of thinking. The other school of thinking that we have had, and this is the other extreme, is the independent peer reviewer. So an independent peer reviewer would basically go all the way to replicate what you have done. Like look at the clinical description and provide an opinion that they agree with or not agree with the clinical description. That's the target. They can look at your cohort definition or independently develop their own cohort definitions. They can execute it on their own data sources or not, basically reproduce everything. And I don't think we can get to that stage, which is a lot of work. We have done it for a few. That's a tremendous amount of work. So we use Phenotype Phebruary to pilot this, where we are, where should we go? But as of right now, I don't think we have an agreement of to what level we should do. And it's up to the work group to decide on whether to accept or not this definition right now. So there's a lot of people on this work group. I mean, I can at the minimum go through the checklist. I think that's the minimum criteria. Do you have a clinical description? I think you met that as a yes. Have you developed one or more cohort definitions? The answer is yes. Have you applied it on at least one data source? You have applied it on more than one data source, and you've used the framework of internal and external validation, which is great. You have provided your insights, your opinion on looking at those definitions using a qualitative method such as cohort diagnostics. You have not executed Phe evaluator, which is fine, and it's probably not feasible in this context unless Joel disagrees.
That's right, but the counts are too low. It's too rare.
Right. So, and you have made a forum post where you have summarized your insights. So you meet the checklist and you're now completely accepted. You can be accepted based on this criteria if that's the standard that we are going for. But since we have not agreed, I'm going to ask the group here, does anybody have reservations that and want to voice an opinion against accepting this definition?
So you're going to submit 5 definitions, or which one are you going to submit?
I'm going one.
Question. So, I would say so. What is most applicable would be the sensitive optical pathway glioma.
Number 2.
So actually number 4 for OPG, and then for NF1 I would say the first one, just simply the diagnosis code for NF1.
Okay, so you're talking about 2 different phenotypes then, one for neurofibromatosis and one for optic nerve glioma. Okay.
I would probably just add the optic pathway glioma is from neurofibromatosis. Right, like that. I think you guys had mentioned that you can get this without NF.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
That's how we defined indeed the phenotype. It's the combination of a neurofibromatosis, a general neurofibromatosis diagnosis, and a diagnosis of neoplasm of the optic nerve.
Neoplasm, yeah.
So which one of these, Maxim? 306, 308, 336, 307?
Would be the 307, but actually also including the malignant neoplasms. I do have to drop off in a few minutes to go to the next meeting.
All right, so do you, well, let's follow up. Any objections to accepting this into the library, or does anybody need more time to review this?
I think we're okay, just as long as we know that there's two definitions, and it's 2 phenotypes that he's submitting.
Two
phenotypes, 1 algorithm each.
Yeah.
Okay. So can Maxim, can you clarify in the forum post that you are submitting to the OHDSI Phenotype Library two phenotypes, and there are differences between those clinical ideas, and then the core definitions that you go with it, what data sources you have executed, basically say that you have met this checklist. And since you have already presented to this work group, and this work group is the deciding, and they have agreed to accept this, we will accept those 2 definitions into the OHDSI Phenotype Library. Okay, congratulations.
Thanks, great.
Thank you.
Apologies, everybody. That's all the time that we have for this work group call. We will meet next time. In the next meeting, there's a request to spend some time on the Save the Syphilis Challenge. Patrick's going to be so mad.
Yeah, no, that's nobody will mention that you called it syphilis.
And we'll go from there. There were some other agenda topics that we'll table for the next conversations. But if anybody wants to stay on, we can continue to talk a little bit about the papers that come a part of the Phenotype February. Okay, because that's an important topic.
One quick offer to Maxim before he jumps off. If you guys want, we can. Other people with data holdings might be, I'm willing to try to run this at Stanford if we put together a core diagnostics package, and I think especially when we identify ones like this where you guys are taking on the challenge of writing it up, then anything else we can do as a work group to help support that, including I'm willing to dig into things more on a peer review basis too, to see if there's anything we can anything else that we can add.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Especially the queries on the follow-up data. That would be very nice if we could run it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because actually the 5th phenotype is missing here, and that would be very interesting for our paper to write on that, because our hypothesis is that base the phenotype on follow-up care will not be feasible in other centers because it's so specific, also based on maybe a national guidance, and often the data might not be available, but we want to test that. So that would be great to have some results on that fifth phenotype.
Sure.
So what? Yeah.
Awesome.
So Maxim, and this is for everybody in the group. Your work and is being tracked here on this thread. Yep. If you could please provide an update on this and how we can help. So like the publication plan, that would be fantastic. I'll follow up with you on how to create a package for a network study.
Great. Then in touch. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Apologies again for running over. Time management is an issue with this for me for this work group. There's a lot of things to talk about. If you guys are available, we can continue to talk. Acute pancreatitis. Anything we need to talk about this? Evan, you're here. Jamie dropped off the call, it looks like.
Yeah, the biggest thing is I don't know if you have anything to add about what Jamie's plan here. I haven't kind of finished the the final revisions of the review that I'd done to kind of explore the ED only pancreatitis in particular, which I have on my list. I just haven't done it yet. But the bigger question is whether or not that is being which version of the cohort is being written up as part of the and what his general publication plan is. Yeah. If you haven't talked, I can reach out to him.
Yeah, you should reach out. Okay. I mean, if there's anything I can do to help, I will. I'm not, and I can be part of the conversation too, if you
want me. Okay, actually, if you talk to them.
Yeah. Anaphylaxis. I've spoken with hand raised. Hand raised and okay.
That was me. I got them. Kaiser.
Hey, Kaiser.
Hey. Just quickly, I know we're a little over. Just wanted to update. I've been trying to access this page. I've been working with Evan for a while on the P10, the HIE one. So yes, Evan and I are moving forward. Evan, please jump in toward the pathway to publication on this in terms of defining the cohort and describing it, how we did it. And we've selected our target journal as well that we're going after. So we're making progress on it. That's all.
Yeah, I would say there was two things that one was we want to develop out some cohorts as features that would be applicable to describing a neonate phenotype. Yeah. On the wish list would be a bit more of a neonate-like version of cohort diagnostics that would have a pretty table, that kind of describes things, because the pretty table right now is very much, focused on adult comorbidities. I was thinking more about that. I don't want to kind of hang things up because I think that might be some more development work that I don't know who would have cycles for it, Kaiser. But I think if we can build out the cohorts as features, so that we can at the very least kind of point to some results that reviewers would and editors would kind of understand on cohort diagnostics. I think that would probably be the minimum viable cohort diagnostics product that would support the publication. And we have those features. I mean, Kaiser's already kind of identified them from the literature in terms of things that people would be interested in knowing about neonates and their timelines. So we can build those out.
Have you built the feature cohorts?
I have.
I think Kaiser's built them out. I think we were going to just fire those my way, Kaiser, and we can kind of get them incorporated into a version of cohort diagnostics for this.
Yeah, both the maternal and neonatal ones. So
I don't. So from a technology standpoint and modification of the cohort diagnostics, I'd a custom version of it to publish it for a paper. I don't think would be a major challenge. I think there'll be a little bit of work, but it's not going to be huge. Okay. So I would say maybe 3 or 4 days of work at max. I don't think that should hold you back. So if you, from a science standpoint, if you are able to build those feature cohorts and share it with me, I can help you to get it to that stage. No problem. We can talk about it.
Just thank you for your time. Again, thank you for everything.
Okay, so this is great. guys are Evan. This is an important topic of very little people, so let's get this done. Okay, so NFL access. I had a conversation with Andrea. She was on the call and she wanted to give an update, but because of time, she had to drop off. So Andrea has proposed a straw man for the structure of her paper. She's working on it. She's also proposed some collaborators for it. So basically the structure of the paper is based on the insights that has already been discussed in Phenotype February. So if you use a code definition that is based on this diagnosis code, you're most probably going to get it wrong. That's because a large number of people get the code for a anaphylaxis prevention action plan. Basically, they have not had anaphylaxis. They may have anaphylaxis in the future. The clinician is putting the code of anaphylaxis just to justify or the dispensation of an anaphylaxis action plan, such as an EpiPen. And we observed that in the code definitions, a code definition that was subset to a doctor's office visit. And it also happened that numerically 70% of the persons that were identified to have anaphylaxis using our initial code definition were those individuals who were part of this anaphylaxis action plan. So they didn't really have anaphylaxis. So that's the insight that she's going to write up and share. And I think that'll be a good progress. Appendicitis. Evan, I know you're making progress on it, right? With the perioperative work group.
Yeah, I've been basically will be by the end of the day today at a point where I think I can submit what I'd want for a cohort diagnostics run. I wouldn't mind touching base quickly about how to just have some decision points around, if there's some that might be better off being developed as cohorts as features versus not. But I think I have at least the minimum viable narrative for creating, because I think that's kind of the accepted thing, right? We can try to publish just the cohort definition, but if we have something to say, it'll add a lot to our ability to write it up. And so I've been building out cohorts that give us that something to say.
Okay, I'm happy to talk to you if you want, if you have time later after this call. Okay, cool. That's it. Reach out. Hi. So these I have subsumed by DME, and I know you asked me what is subsumed by DME. So there is an idea of writing a paper on designated medical events. DME is designated medical events. Almost all of these definitions that were part of the first week of Phenotype February were worked as part of an effort that Asa and I helped lead, which is called the designated medical events, and they are acute pancreatitis, anaphylaxis, acute acquired neutropenia, acute hepatic failure. And so we thought we can subsume that work by those, and it will be a publicly written document. We have just not started it. That's what we mean by DME. Collaborators welcome. We are going to, let's all work together on it, and that's it. Not made any progress.
So for these, because I know there's, I see kind of different pockets of work happening in other places. Like you want to kind of keep those together as opposed to splicing them off into individual cohort write-ups.
Yeah, that's the thinking right now. Again, we didn't start at all. Acute hepatic failure has a lot of interest by itself.
Yes, exactly.
And there was Judy from the FDA had reached out also to collaborate on acute hepatic failure. And there's many other people, you have expressed, Evan, you know people who are interested, and so it is possible that could be spun off into its own body of work. I'm open to that. So whatever, just haven't had time to think about it yet.
Yeah, no worries. No problem. And that would be the risk too, right? Is that as we split them off into individual things, they just get added to the pile. So I'm not taking a hard line on it. I'm just was kind of curious as to if there is sufficient interest. I think we could probably generate, like you said, like a lot of interest in this area and push something forward.
Yeah.
But I've got a list of stuff to get through first too. So
yeah, we are like, if you remember this time last year, we had nothing, right? We were thinking about this is an area that we need to push forward. Now we have so much work. Still haven't made progress.
Yeah.
So I've got Christopher McCauley was on the call. I just had an opportunity to give him. We didn't have time to give him an opportunity to explain, but there was. I know they made some significant progress. They were able to run core diagnostics on their data source, which is like a specialized data source of persons with adult dermatomyositis, and that'll be interesting. So I'm excited to hear from them what the output of core diagnostics is telling them. And there was an email that he has exchanged with me about the thoughts that he wants to progress, and they want to complete in terms of their timeline. They said May is when they're targeting their paper. So that's very promising. Parkinson's disease, Dr. Wu is continuing to push this. There was a few weeks that he was obviously occupied with his priorities. So we had a conversation with him yesterday. That conversation is recorded. He followed up by the forum post. He has some specific asks for help, and we're going to offer that help for him. And based on that, I think we'll make progress.
Anything else? I mean, I missed that. Just to give him the time here, I missed that call. But
yeah,
was there anything else that like anything else other network? Like I could run it at Stanford, or is there?
Yeah, so there is an ask for a network study, but I don't. He didn't feel like it was ready for it yet. He still wants to iterate on that some definition. There are some sources of errors that he wants to fix before he wants to move forward.
Okay, and similarly with dermatomyositis.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess it's a broader question. Is do we envision that we were that it sounds like each of these are kind of progressing at their own rate. So if they become a network study, they'll become their own network study and not one that's part of the broader effort. So somebody just needs and I'm happy to kind of learn how to do it, but needs to package up a cohort diagnostics run as a network study.
Yeah, that's pretty easy actually. So there is a framework for it. So there is, as you probably know this, there is a GitHub organization called OHDSI Studies. And inside the OHDSI Studies, we have a phenotype level repositories. And I think if there's not one, we can create one. So I've created one or created some here, I believe. I don't remember. But essentially, like here, phenotype ST elevated myocardial infarction. That was created in Feb 14th. And okay, this was just created, but nothing was put in. So that's what we do. For every study, for every phenotype, we'll create a package. This package will become it's a fully executable, self-contained package that can be downloaded, using whatever ways we can install packages in R and just execute it in any data source. There is an upload function that allows you to share the results to the study coordinator.
Yeah.
And one of us can serve as the study coordinator, and that's it.
Okay, and that does that create kind of its own self-contained SQL folder, like all the kind of typical components?
Perfect. Okay. Yep. So I'll show you a template. So this could be an example. So this says Phenotype February 2023, but ignore that. But think about this as P1 acute pancreatitis, or P2 appendicitis, and so on. And it will have an inst folder with its own SQLs and cohort JSONs. And it will have its R functions that execute the core diagnostics.
Right.
So this is a core diagnostics based study package. We could explore strategist based study package. Strategist has characterization in it, and strategist can call core diagnostics. Strategist can call core incidence package. So that allows us ability to call more dependencies and execute them. Strategists, I think the first time that we are actually testing strategists is part of the save this syphilis challenge. So we'll see how it goes, and if that is a success, and then we can flip this from core diagnostics to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think to answer your question, I think every line in this spreadsheet will have its own track.
Okay. Fair enough.
Mirza, I think Mirza has a little delay, and he's expressed that, and that's fine. And we heard from Kaiser, so that's where we are. And I think we're making good progress. And oh, let me add E11. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.
Awesome. I've got to drive the kiddos